In a Type 2 attestation, evidence strategy is the operating system that keeps the entire audit running smoothly, and sampling is the scheduler that ensures every critical process receives attention within the period under review. Your objective as a learner is to design a strategy that delivers sufficiency, appropriateness, and traceability without drowning teams in administrative chores. Sufficiency means the quantity of artifacts can support a conclusion. Appropriateness means each artifact is relevant and reliable. Traceability binds artifacts to the period, population, system of record, and responsible owner. Because Type 2 focuses on design and operating effectiveness over time, your plan must specify how to gather recurring artifacts, validate their integrity, and present them in a way auditors can independently reperform. When automation carries routine exports and QA checks, humans can focus on interpreting exceptions rather than chasing screenshots, transforming audit readiness from a scramble into a steady, predictable cadence. Once the population is locked, sample selection becomes a transparent, mechanical step. Export the sample list with unique IDs, timestamps, and the total population count on the same report, making the sampling fraction plain. If you use randomization, store the seed value and the selection script. If you use a GRC selector, export the algorithm parameters and hash the output for immutability. An owner approval step confirms the sample truly reflects the control scope and the audit period. Saving all of this in an immutable repository prevents later confusion about substitutions or redraws. The outcome is a sample packet that any reasonable auditor can verify line by line without email archaeology or interpretive guesswork. Evidence sufficiency testing is your internal dress rehearsal before fieldwork. For each sampled item, verify that you can retrieve the primary artifact from the system of record and that it contains the fields the auditor will evaluate: actor, action, date, outcome, and any approvals. Check that the artifact is authentic, direct export, not a pasted table, unaltered, hash or system metadata intact, and readable without proprietary tools where possible. Supplement with secondary proof if the primary artifact is terse. For example, pair a change ticket with the CI/CD pipeline log that shows deployment time and success state. This is not busy work. It is quality control that turns sampling risk into confidence that the story each artifact tells is complete and credible. Cross-control sampling efficiencies keep the program humane. Many controls share populations or artifacts access, provisioning and segregation of duties reviews may draw from the same IAM changelog. Backup restoration and disaster recovery exercises may reference the same restoration records. Reusing population data across related controls reduces extraction effort and minimizes disputes about scope. Coordination among control owners avoids competing requests against the same team during peak cycles. Track every reuse explicitly in your evidence index. Note which artifacts serve multiple tests, so an auditor can see consistency rather than suspect duplication. Efficiency here isn't corner cutting, it is disciplined stewardship of people's time. Automated evidence gathering converts periodic drudgery into reliable routine. Connect directly to APIs or monitoring platforms to schedule recurring exports aligned with each control's frequency. Weekly vulnerability scans, monthly access reviews, quarterly key rotations. Embed timestamp integrity checks to ensure exports actually represent the intended windows, and store artifacts in a structured repository with metadata for control ID, owner, and period. Automation should also capture configuration snapshots and policy states, for example, encryption settings or MFA requirements, at the time of control execution. By letting systems produce their own testimony, you reduce human error and increase the authenticity auditors prize. Period consistency is the quiet discipline that holds Type 2 narratives together. Every sample must fall within the audit window, and your artifacts must show that control events occurred throughout the period, not bunched in one successful month. Ensure there are no gaps between sprints or quarters. If a tool was offline or a job skipped, document the reason and compensating measures. Retain a period boundary file, often a simple manifest listing start and end dates, releases, and any change freezes, so auditors can relate artifacts to calendar reality. Consistency is not only chronological, it is also about coverage across environments that were in scope the entire time. Exception validation is where your professionalism becomes visible. When a sampled item fails, an overdue review, a missing approval, a failed job, record the cause, scope, and impact. Validate whether compensating controls reduced risk during the exception, and retain evidence of remediation and verification. Materiality assessment belongs here as well. Not every deviation threatens the opinion, but patterns can. By analyzing frequency and impact, you help your auditor weigh significance and you help leadership prioritize fixes. Exceptions, handled transparently and completely, strengthen credibility. Hidden exceptions destroy it. Change evidence during the audit period introduces a second dimension to sampling, versioning. If a process changed mid-period, say a new IAM workflow replaced email approvals, you must test both versions. Record effective dates, update the narrative to note the transition, and ensure samples straddle the change so operating effectiveness is demonstrated before and after. Mark artifacts with the control version they correspond to, so the auditor does not misapply a new procedure to an old artifact. Change is inevitable in modern environments. Clear version control turns it from a risk into a traceable story of improvement. Quality assurance and peer review prevent avoidable rework. Before submission, the compliance team validates artifact completeness against a checklist. Correct naming convention, readable format, intact timestamps, correct owner, and matching sample ID. A dual review model catches both content errors and context gaps. One reviewer checks the data, the other checks the narrative alignment. Record results in a QA log inside the repository, linking findings to corrected artifacts. This routine elevates evidence quality from good enough to audit ready, making fieldwork smoother and shortening the cycle between request and acceptance. Chain of custody discipline preserves the integrity of everything you have collected. Track the origin system, collector, and date for each file, and compute a hash at intake that you can verify during fieldwork. Restrict write permissions on evidence folders to curators, and log all updates, transfers, and approvals. If an artifact must be replaced, a wrong export window for instance, retain the original, reference it in the replacement notes, and document the rationale. Chain of custody is less about ceremony and more about trust. It shows that what the auditor sees is exactly what the system produced, not a curated imitation. Auditor collaboration cadence turns evidence exchange into a conversation rather than a data dump. Establish weekly syncs during fieldwork for quick feedback on sufficiency and format, and deliver artifacts incrementally so reviewers can test early and steer requests before they expand. Maintain a clear clarification channel, one inbox or ticket queue, and close the loop by documenting decisions and request resolutions in your index. Collaborative rhythm prevents pile-ups in the final week, reduces the risk of misaligned expectations, and builds shared confidence that the attestation is progressing on schedule and substance. Evidence mapping to criteria ensures nothing falls through the cracks and nothing blooms into unnecessary work. Tag every artifact to its trust services criteria element and control objective, and crosswalk those tags to the system description commitments. Confirm coverage by scanning the index against your control matrix. Every narrative should have at least one artifact per required frequency within the period. This map is also a navigation aid for auditors. Instead of searching by file name, they navigate by objective and land on evidence that already fits the question they must answer. The result is faster testing and fewer clarification loops. Automation of traceability is the capstone that makes your program scalable. Use dynamic dashboards that link controls to artifacts, with filters for period, owner, system, and status. Back these views with audit logs that prove who collected each item and who reviewed it. Provide time-boxed, read-only access to auditors so they can retrieve artifacts self-service while you retain control of the repository. Traceability automation does not replace human judgment, it frees it, allowing your experts to spend their energy on insights and exception analysis rather than on file wrangling. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Metrics and performance tracking give you a living view of how well your evidence program functions. Track average time to collect artifacts per control, percentage of evidence complete before auditor submission, and the rate of QA errors or rework. These numbers provide a feedback loop to improve processes between cycles. For instance, if one team consistently delivers evidence late or with formatting errors, training or automation can target that weak spot. Likewise, tracking the overall duration of audit cycles from readiness kickoff to final attestation helps demonstrate progress over time. Metrics transform compliance from static reporting into continuous performance management, turning readiness into an ongoing operational objective rather than a once-a-year panic. Common pitfalls in Type 2 evidence management tend to follow predictable patterns, and every experienced auditor has seen them. Mismatched timestamps between artifacts and population files undermine credibility. Missing population definitions or incomplete sampling logic cause auditors to question data integrity. Automation outputs that have never been verified by humans lead to false confidence and sudden failures when tested. The fix lies in standardization. Write sampling scripts that record query parameters and timestamps automatically. Use QA templates to verify metadata fields and run reconciliation checks that confirm exported counts match original populations. Every automated process still needs human validation at least once. Automation scales assurance only when it's proven trustworthy. Sampling optimization balances rigor with practicality. Oversampling wastes effort, while undersampling invites doubt. A risk-based grouping model focuses attention where process variability or business impact is greatest. For example, a payroll control might require higher sampling frequency than an internal training acknowledgement. Oversampling is prudent when systems or teams change frequently. Undersampling works where automation stabilizes processes. Align sampling depth to both transaction volume and risk tier, and share your rationale with auditors early so expectations align. When auditors understand the logic behind your sample strategy, they're more likely to accept results without excessive follow-up. Optimization is less about math and more about narrative coherence, showing that your sample plan fits your environment's risk reality. A well-designed evidence repository underpins everything else. Organize folders by trust category, domain, and control identifier so auditors can navigate easily without relying on tribal knowledge. Apply role-based access controls. Control owners and curators can upload, reviewers can comment, and auditors have read-only visibility. All access and edits should generate logs for transparency. Define retention periods aligned with audit cycles and regulatory obligations, typically keeping artifacts for 2 to 3 years unless contractual terms require longer. Automate archive and purge tasks to prevent clutter while maintaining the integrity of historical evidence. A clean, well-labeled repository communicates professionalism before an auditor opens the first file. It is evidence of order itself. Integrating readiness assessments with attestation evidence closes the loop between preparation and execution. The same repository and sampling workflows used for readiness reviews should feed directly into the formal audit, avoiding duplication. Pre-audit sampling exercises help detect missing data or unclear evidence requirements months before fieldwork. When readiness and attestation share continuity, teams build a muscle memory for compliance. Controls are tested, evidence collected, gaps fixed, and artifacts versioned continuously. Reusing verified artifacts across readiness and formal audit cycles saves time and reduces the mental fatigue of starting over each year. This approach turns compliance from a campaign into a continuous state of preparedness. Continuous evidence pipeline maturity represents the future of Type 2 assurance. Manual uploads and screenshots are being replaced by automated data flows directly from production systems. Cloud logs, configuration management databases, and monitoring dashboards now export versioned reports at scheduled intervals. APIs verify hashes, timestamps, and scope automatically. These feeds enable proactive anomaly detection, alerting teams when data suggests a missed control event or unusual pattern. As organizations advance toward continuous audit models, evidence ceases to be a byproduct. It becomes a living system that monitors itself. This evolution frees compliance professionals to focus on interpretation and improvement rather than repetitive collection. Maturity progression in evidence governance follows a predictable ladder. Level 1 represents manual collection and ad hoc QA, functional but fragile. Level 2 introduces structured repositories, templates, and defined ownership, replacing chaos with order. Level 3 integrates automated collection, sampling, and mapping, reducing manual intervention while improving traceability. Level 4 achieves predictive monitoring and continuous audit, where control operation and evidence collection occur simultaneously, feeding dashboards that highlight deviations in real time. This highest stage delivers continuous assurance. Leadership, auditors, and customers can see compliance posture not as a snapshot, but as an ongoing, measurable performance indicator. Training and enablement turn these processes into muscle memory. Regular sessions for control owners explain what makes evidence sufficient and appropriate, using real examples of accepted and rejected artifacts. Mock sampling drills simulate the end-to-end process, from population extraction to QA review, helping staff internalize the rhythm of Type 2 readiness. Tutorials on QA checklists and repository structure prevent basic errors that waste time later. Reinforcing that readiness is a continuous discipline, not a seasonal scramble, builds accountability and pride in precision. The best programs make evidence management part of professional identity. Teams view producing clean, traceable proof as a mark of operational excellence. In conclusion, evidence, strategy, and sampling are where theory becomes assurance in Type 2 audits. They translate the story of reliable control operation into verifiable, reproducible proof. A mature program defines its populations transparently, selects samples methodically, collects artifacts automatically, and preserves them immutably. Quality assurance, collaboration, and metrics ensure the process remains credible and efficient. The goal isn't perfection, it's predictability. When an auditor arrives, every artifact is where it should be. Every sample tells the same story, and every question has already been answered by disciplined preparation. With automation, traceability, and continuous QA, evidence becomes not a chore, but a living demonstration of trust, the very essence of what a SOC 2 Type 2 report is meant to prove.